welcome back to the channel. Today, I wanted to give you a little bit of context into my own backstory, about my experience, and certainly about the driving factors that motivate my own thinking and the lens that I look through now when analyzing the market and forward looking into this next bull cycle. Before I do, I totally understand that right now, I'm in a situation where it's probably going to be a lot different to the majority of you. That isn't lost on me. I have busted my ass for years to put myself in the situation that I'm in now. However, along the way, I've learned some very expensive mistakes that hopefully I can save you from. So if this alone brings value and helps you streamline your own path to success, then I'm accomplishing what I set out to accomplish. So my path to quote unquote success, certainly success to me at that point, and it's all relative, of course, is very much a traditional route by any means. I graduated law school. I was then headhunted by Merrill Lynch and started trading for them for a few years in London. Then I got poached by a venture capitalist firm and ended up working in Silicon Valley for a couple of years in the venture capitalist world. My experience in the venture capitalist world was really focused on tech, innovation, a lot of that fringe technology that I know I've mentioned in previous videos. And so my job at the time was to really seek out new innovative tech, innovative companies, and figure out what kind of potential they had. Do, an audit of sorts of where they were as a company at that point, where we could potentially take them, and how we could potentially extend their brand footprint and start building a much larger network effect for those brands. This was around the time where software as a service was, very new and a bit of a buzzword in Silicon Valley. I'm sure a lot of you remember when companies like Salesforce came to fruition. A lot of these software tools and platforms that a lot of us are able to use either in the workplace or at home. This was around the time where it was all the more important to be able to vet and appropriately decide on where to allocate our funds and what kind of companies were worth us getting involved in. Now, fast forward a number of years, and I'm in a different situation again. I own a public relations firm, a marketing firm. I do own some real estate, and I'm in hospitality. I own a couple of restaurants and bars, cigar lounge. I'm in a very different situation. That has taken a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get there. Now, along the way, I've had, the luxury, or I've been in a very lucky position to be able to include a lot of very successful and pretty wealthy people into my circles. Now, we all know the importance of having mentors in your life, and I guess a lot of these folks were acting that way for me. And so I was able to put a bit of a steroid injection into my own career trajectory, which has really allowed me to capitalize a lot faster than probably I would have should I not have had any of that experience or insight along the way. One of the things that I have noticed, and I give you all of this context purely so you have a bit of history about myself and about my journey. As I mentioned, I have a number of friends, colleagues, I have a number of folks that are in my network that have done very well through traditional business. A lot of them tend to be along, the older side. And so, their net worth is at a level that most of us would love to be at. A lot of work, a lot of sweat equity, a lot of intelligent decisions, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of stress have all played into the majority of those journeys, right? One thing that I have noticed the last bull cycle, the bull cycle before that, I now have a number of people who weren't necessarily hitting that high net worth individual title at any point during the time that I've known them. Of course, we all have friends from different walks of life. A lot of these folks who were very early into crypto, that did keep their finger on the pulse of what was happening, have since made a ton of money. And I'm talking tens, one or two have made hundreds of millions of dollars from, as I've mentioned before, relatively speaking, modest amount of investment to begin with. And so we've all heard about this kind of reallocation of money, the transference of wealth from one generation to the next, from one technology, one sector to the next. I've seen this take place within my own circle. Some of those guys who were not necessarily at the same level as other folks have now surpassed that multiple times over. And it's through their journey in crypto. My own journey in crypto started around the first cycle, let's say. Now, I thought I was very, very in tune, let's say, with all things tech, all things innovation. Crypto being one of those new facets that, really came to fruition around the same time that I was on the lookout for it. And so I was, quote unquote, an OG into Ethereum. I had some Bitcoin too, but I was, getting entry points into Ethereum just over 30 cents, which of course we know compared to now is, an amazing time to get in. I wasn't in any of the, the ICO phases or anything like that, but I was pretty early to market as soon as it was available to the public. Obviously at this time, crypto was brand new. We only had a handful of cryptos out there. And so when I made a 3 or a 4x compared to my stock portfolio, compared to other avenues of investment, that was fantastic for me. In hindsight, obviously, although I didn't put in a ton of money at the time, if I had just kept that, it would have been life-changing wealth right now. And so lesson number 1 learned. At that time, though, I'm not sure there was so much of a lesson. It was still a major leap of faith. And so I think that anyone there, unless you really had true conviction and some inside information to this category, or you were really enlightened and saw the path forward clearer than the majority of people, I'm not sure too many people actually maintained their portfolios throughout this whole crazy crypto journey. So fast forward, we hit a bear market, of course. At those times, skepticism was at an all-time high. It was the first time that we'd gone through this. And so a lot of the conversation was really centered around, is crypto going to be around for the long haul? I know that to a certain extent, we still see a lot of that conversation happening now. But for those of us who have been throughout this crypto journey since, really inception, it's something we can easily sweep under the rug and forget about because the writing truly is on the wall right now if you do your due diligence and you educate yourself. At that point, we didn't have half or a fraction of the data points that we do now. So, of course, I didn't get involved in crypto at all. Then the bull market came back around, and I had a smart idea. I thought that I could outsmart the market, and rather than buying tokens directly, I had a connection in another country that shan't be named, where electricity was very cheap. My wife had a connection there, and her family owned some warehouses. And so I bought a lot of mining machines from China and decided I wanted to start my own mining farm. We focused on Bitcoin and Ethereum at the time. And so at the time, it was a lot of money for me. I invested into this. And by the time I had actually taken possession of the machines, got them all set up and running, had a security guard or two monitoring the place, months and months had passed. And of course, the makers of these machines, certainly the machines that are offered directly to the public, they know what they're doing. Those machines only have a shelf life of, let's just say, a year or two. And by the time that I had taken possession of them, about 6 months had gone by from the time of purchase. And so all the money I spent on machines had somewhat of a degraded sense of return, because by the time those machines were set up, they weren't quite as powerful as they once were. And so the amount of mining that was taking place was being outpaced by the advances in machinery and the difficulty in the algorithms when it comes to mining. A lot more complicated than that, but you get the picture. Now, this means that I didn't quite get the return that I wanted. More importantly, the government of this country seized my machines. They didn't like the idea of people making money. And so they decided to take it for themselves, and I ended up throwing a lot of money down the pipe. Now, obviously, in hindsight, a much better decision, and something that I'm taking to the grave, has been, rather than trying to outsmart the market, rather than trying to find something else to make more and more gains from it, I could have just held those tokens and made some monumental gains just by holding. We've seen this time and time again, and people always say the same thing. You hear terms like time in the market beats timing the market. Totally agree. I've done a fair amount of trading over time, and always, without a shadow of a doubt, it may just be that I am not the best trader in the world, but other folks that I know have tried to do this have had almost the exact same experience. It is far better to hold tokens and coins that you have conviction in for the long term, because you're ultimately going to mitigate your risk a hell of a lot. And, I'm not selecting tokens for myself. I'm not getting involved in any investment opportunities that I am not vetting the hell out of. The way I approach things, and you heard me talk about this in various videos, I utilize a lot of the experience that I've had through traditional VC investing. Now, even though the technology varies from industry to industry, the fundamentals remain the same. I also talked in a previous video about the first port of call for anyone looking for investment is to answer the question how long they've been around and how much revenue they're bringing in. Well, for a lot of innovation, you don't necessarily have those data points to pull from. So there's no way around it. You have to start looking for other avenues of value. And these other avenues of value don't need to get necessarily as complicated as some may think. Yes, we had data analysts who are analyzing the market conditions, the potential network effect, the various other trigger points that would ultimately lead to a more informed decision as to whether something was a good investment opportunity or not. But ultimately, I'm not too convinced that the same common sense algorithms in your head you're able to make were that much different from what the data scientists were pulling off the market. And so when I'm looking at something like a HEX, when I'm looking at something like PULSECHAIN and the whole ecosystem that's going around this, it ticks so many of the boxes that I would traditionally have looked for through, a venture capitalist investment. This is the same algorithm that investment banks use. A lot of the, certainly Fortune 500 companies that have their own investment arm that I've personally done work with who are looking for new tech and innovation, regardless of the percentage of their overall investment portfolio that it fills. They're still talking institutional money that way outweighs any of the retail investments that are going on. And so the lens in that I'm looking at a lot of these programs, a lot of these projects, a lot of these solutions really comes down to figuring out what the community is right now and where it's going. Of course, the technology, of course, the tokenomics play a role, but that network effect is one of the biggest movers of the needle that fills part of that algorithm. And so right now, and I mentioned in my video earlier today, many of you are asking me to focus on other projects, and I am looking at other projects, and there are other projects right now that I am considering investing in. Certainly a few that I've kept my ear to the grindstone into some of these new industries, like AI, certainly VR and Meta. But right now, I don't have the same level of conviction at this point as I do with something like a HEX. To me, HEX is a no-brainer. And again, I'm just giving you my experience here, and I'm hoping it's bringing some value. I'm not a financial advisor. Not now. And so take this as entertainment purposes, but also take this as, a bit of an indicator as to there is a reason why I am going so heavy into crypto right now. I've seen the folks who have made a large amount of money by anyone's standards through traditional means. I've also seen the people who have certainly streamlined that path to wealth far, far faster and to many multiples by simply taking advantage and capitalizing of what is no doubt one of the biggest revolutions that we have right now. If you're still on the fence about crypto, don't be. It is the future. There's so much institutional buying that's taken place. So many logistics companies, infrastructure technologies, and various other industries and sectors and vertical markets that really are looking to integrate crypto at all different levels throughout their companies and in their infrastructures. And so it's important to always bear that in mind. Don't let the media dictate when you should buy, when you should be scared. Unfortunately, we don't live in a world where they have your best interest in mind. We do have some journalists who will always look to provide you with the truth, but ultimately the ammunition and the messaging that they're fed comes from on high, and it's always from companies and institutions that have the dollars to put that message out and scare you away from getting into the market at the time you should. They want you buying at the top of the market so they can sell out of their positions. And so we want to try to avoid that. This channel is always going to be focused on making money. Yes, I'm sure a lot of us are interested in crypto, interested in the tech, and interested in where this whole sector is going to go and the various ways it's going to interact with, AI and metaverse and all of that stuff. But ultimately, there is money to be made, and there is money to be made very, very quickly compared to a lot of the journeys, certainly even the journey that I've been a part of, where it's taken blood, sweat, and tears. You think it's stressful waiting for a coin to go up or down? There are so many more anxiety-filled experiences out there that way outweigh that. Trust me when I tell you, this is quote-unquote the easiest way, the easiest path to wealth, and the quickest path to wealth if you're making intelligent decisions. That doesn't mean jumping into every single product that comes to fruition. There are always going to be hundreds of products, popping up, and especially with the PulseChain ecosystem. We're going to see 1,000,001 rug pulls. We're going to see 1,000,001 new potential avenues to invest. We have to be very vigilant in only investing into the opportunities that we have conviction about, which is why I'm not covering a huge ton of projects right now. Yes, there are probably some good projects out there, but I wouldn't feel comfortable certainly promoting, let's say, and I use the word promoting very loosely. I'm just simply giving you my opinion on things that I am vested in. And if I'm investing in them, then it certainly means that I'm doing due diligence and I'm analyzing the market, as you should be as well. My point of view is only one of many that you should be taking in. I can't reiterate that enough. But this channel is to gain wealth, and it's not about taking huge, monumental risks for little reward. The risk to reward ratio is something that is always in the back of my mind. And I will say this as well. It may come as a hard truth to many of you, but if you're not starting with huge amounts of capital, like we've talked about in other videos, if you want life-changing wealth, and again, that's a relative number, but life-changing wealth, in my opinion, is millions. At the very minimum, it's millions. Now, I get it that a lot of you may change your life with 100,000, 200,000, but when you get to that type of level, you're going to see that it requires millions to really get to the level that I guess the majority of you will probably imagine wanting to get to. In order to get there, it takes conviction, and it takes kind of jumping in with both feet. Now, that may not be well received by some of you. Common sense would dictate perhaps that we want to hedge into, a number of different tokens, $1,000 there, a couple $100 there. That's not my mentality. And so if that's your mentality, maybe this isn't the channel for you. My channel, my ethos on investing is to really keep to the Warren Buffett mentality. And that is, diversification is for losers. Now, obviously, there's a balance to be had. And I'm not saying diversify, not to diversify at all. But the projects that I will get involved in are the ones that I vet extremely strongly and that I have conviction with enough to jump in with both feet. Now, it doesn't matter if if you have a couple $100, if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, the percentage that you allocate to these opportunities is going to be the same. If you have conviction about something and you think that this is the path to success, well, the more you are vested, the bigger the returns. That's the harsh truth. And obviously, a lot of this is somewhat speculation. There's no guaranteed path here, but you have to have belief in the choices you make, which means that it's all the more important to be able to do your due diligence and research correctly so you're able to make those intelligent decisions. Anyway, this video has already gone on 17 minutes, so I hope this has been useful. I will, of course, provide more context going forward. But we've only been around for, I believe, about 3 weeks. We're already approaching 1,000 subs, and I can't thank you enough for that. Obviously, we want to go onwards and upwards to join the uncaged community, as I'm calling it. And there's a reason behind that, aside from the nameplate. So I'll jump into that at a future date as well. But stay vigilant, have confidence, and remember, right now, the market may have just taken a shift within this micro ecosystem, this hype cycle that we're talking about. But in the long run, it's really nothing. So don't get excited. Don't start acting with your emotions and selling out of a 2x or a 3x. You need to be patient to see those big returns. I cannot say that enough. Until the next time.